Goeienaand en hartelijk welkom. As jy dink beurtkrag is erg, wag tot jy beurtwater ervaar. Dit kan net om die draai wees. So sê kenners verlede week by 'n konferensie in Johannesburg. Met 'n groeiende bevolking en 2 dekades se verwaarlosing van infrastruktuur is 'n waterkrisis ons voorland. Huishoudings moet nou al begin om minstens 20% op hulle waterverbruik te bespaar, sodat die land 'n 10 jaar waterreserve kan opbou. Hoe erg is die probleem werklik en wat kan gewone burgers doen? Dit is waaroor ons met kenners gesels, maar kom ons skets eers die braaddonker prentjie.
Suid-Afrika het beperkte waterbronne. Hy is nommer 30 op die lys van die droogste lande ter wêreld. Hierdie jaar gaan die land ook gebukkend onder die ergste droogte in 23 jaar. Vele mielieoeste is tot niet en die regering word genoodsaak om bystand te verleen. Maar die tekort aan reën is nie die enigste waterprobleem wat Suid-Afrikaners in die gesig staar nie. Beurtwater is op pad. Na 1994 is miljoene nuwe verbruikers by die waterstelsel toegevoeg. Tog is daar min oorweging gegee aan die kapasiteit van wateropgaar en verwerkingsaanlegte. Die gepaardgaande wanbestuur van munisipaliteite, nie betaling vir water, vermorsing van water deur die swak instandhouding van die infrastruktuur, asook die aanstelling van werkers sonder die nodige kundigheid, is besig om veral kleiner dorpies se wateraanlegte heeltemal in duie te laat stort. 20 jaar van munisipale wanbestuur veroorsaak dat dele van KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Noordwes en Mpumalanga heeltemal sonder water sit en die gemeenskappe moet tou staan by watertrokke om hulle emmers vol te maak. Die gemeenskappe is kwaad en protesteer vurig. Maklik die helfte of meer vars water word vermors weens gebreekte pype, krane wat lek, pompe wat nie werk nie en onverantwoordelike watergebruik. Een van die redes vir die huidige krisis is swak geldbestuur. Die geld is wel beskikbaar, maar word nie doeltreffend aangewend nie. Met riool wat in strate afvloei en watersuiweringsaanlegte wat vir maande stukkend staan, lyk die prentjie maar bleek. 'n Omvattende reddingsplan sal uitgerol moet word om beurtwater te voorkom.
Net na die handelsvoorsig gesels ons met professor Anthony Turton, 'n omgewings- en waterspesialis, asook Julius Kleinhans van AfriForum en Dr. Chris Herold, visiepresident van die Suid-Afrikaanse Instituut van Siviele Ingenieurswese. Bly gerus ingeskakel. Ons is terug en ons gesels oor Suid-Afrika se waterkrisis. Ek verwelkom graag in die ateljee vir professor Anthony Turton, omgewings- en waterkenner, vir Julius Kleinhans, hoof van AfriForum se omgewingsake, en Dr. Chris Herold, visiepresident van die Suid-Afrikaanse Instituut van Siviele Ingenieurswese. Professor Turton, I would like to start with you. Are we on the threshold of a catastrophe?
I don't like to use the word catastrophe, but we are certainly in a very bad position. Let me say we're in a very vulnerable position at this point in time.
Give us a picture of that position.
Well, the situation is quite simple that South Africa, as we know, is a water-constrained country. We've managed our water resources fairly well over the last century by building large dams. The total volume of water we've stored in our dams is approximately 38 billion cubic meters of water. Recent scientific work that's just been published now the last few months shows that about 2/3 of that bulk storage capacity is now contaminated or eutrophic, contaminated by blue-green algae. And in my view, that's our problem.
Okay, before we get to that, the extent of the water source that we have, is that enough or not?
Well, the 38 billion cubic meters that we have at a high assurance of supply is not enough because we've lost our buffering capacity. So, in other words, we are pretty close to the limits of what we have available, and we have to be very clever in the way we manage that.
From what I understand, we waste about 50% of our clean water, and apart from that, we also then have this kind of pollution in at least 2/3 of our dams. Is that correct?
Yes. In other words, on the one hand, we are volumetrically constrained, but I don't think that's our major crisis. But we are volumetrically constrained. On the other hand, the water that we have stored in our bulk systems, in fact, is now of increasingly deteriorating quality. So in my view, this is our biggest problem. The fact that the water that we have is fast becoming unfit for purpose, and there's a lot of sort of sub issues that come out of that space.
Julius, julle gaan toetse doen. En die hele jongste verslag dui daarop dat die dinge daarom so bietjie beter begin lyk. Beide ten opsigte van die waterkwaliteit en rioolafloopwater.
Freek, ja, ek kan praat namens Afriforum se takke reg oor die land. Waar ons takke is, sien ons verbetering, maar ek dink in die algemeen is die water in 'n kritiese toestand. Ek dink daar's 44% van ons riviere wat krities is. En natuurlik is dit die eindverbruiker wat aan die agterspeen suig op die oomblik. 'n Vervalle staat dui daarop aan dat omtrent 4000 miljoen liter riool elke dag in ons riviere onbehandeld gestort word. So die kritiese toestand wat dit kan hê en gesondheidsimplikasies is geweldig. Ons sit op 'n tikkende tydbom in Suid-Afrika wat water betref.
Maar die jongste toetse wat jy gedoen het, dui daarop daar is 'n bietjie van 'n verbetering, is dit so?
Absoluut. Waar ons takke is, weer eens, ons het al probleme gesien. Ons het druk toegepas deur Afriforum se strukture en so het ons ook met hofbriewe en goeders die regering kon dwing om aan die minimumvereistes te voldoen.
So dit gaan oor julle aktivisme wat gehelp het, maar ons kom daarby net na die handelsnuus want ek wil 'n bietjie gesels oor wat moet ons dan doen. I would like to ask you, Dr. Herold, then one of the fundamental problems in the reading that I've done is that we have a scarcity of the qualified people to manage and to actually to also operationally be involved in the cleaning of the water. Is that true?
Absolutely, yes. The municipalities a few years ago were already down to 1/7 of the number of engineers and engineering technicians that they had available, which was a huge crisis in terms of management and in terms of technical expertise.
So there are many of these water systems today that do not have engineers who can keep an eye on things.
Especially in the rural areas, there are many municipalities who don't have any technical engineers. And that's not just water, that's for all the services, because in a small municipality, typically the engineer would look after water, he'd look after electricity, look after housing, the whole gamut. They don't have anybody.
But luckily we have 34 Cubans who are helping us.
Yes, that's another story altogether, but yes, certainly.
Ja, ekskuus, dit is onaanvaarbaar. Die waterwet maak voorsiening daarvoor dat mense sekere kwalifikasies moet hê om op 'n wateraanleg te werk. Hierdie mense werk met mense se lewens elke dag. Ons almal drink water. Hulle bedreig ons lewens op die einde van die dag. Ons het genoeg ingenieurs in Suid-Afrika wat 20-30 jaar se ondervinding het wat nie in daai posisie sit nie. Dit is nie aanvaarbaar nie.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
Just briefly, I want to make two comments. The first comment is I'm actually working on one particular sewage works at the moment, a large sewage works, releases about 200 megalitres a day of partially treated sewage. There's 1/4 of an engineer or senior scientist for that plant, 1/4, 0.25. In other words, one engineer for 4 plants of that magnitude. Now, that's one problem. The other problem is I'm also working on a project right now in KZN, where there's an absolute crisis. Now, when I say crisis, you talk about a headless chicken. This is a typical headless chicken, where there is a water treatment plant in the Mvoti River that supplies water to a rural area. Because of the drought situation, there's insufficient water in the river. So now the headless chicken approach has been applied, and a person that has got no knowledge of it has actually looked upstream and said, oh, it's about sand mining. Sand mining has caused the water problem, without understanding that we're living in a drought. So now there's this draconian approach whereby they've cut off all sand mining operations without thinking about what about the civil engineering, what about the concrete that's needed now for highway construction, bridge building, and they're talking now about constructing two desalination plants. Where's the concrete going to come from that? So in other words, that's what concerns me. It's the crisis management, the fact that the cause-effect linkages are being incorrectly determined. And in fact, working on the particular Mvoti River Basin, there's 10 gauging stations in the entire basin to gauge rainfall, of which 2 have been working for the last 3 years. And those 2 suggest that there's actually quite good rainfall because they're up in the mountains. So it's the flow of data from these multiple points that come to a central decision-making point where the decisions are made. That is the crisis we're having. So basically, I say that we are facing institutional failure, substantial institutional failure, and we're seeing that across the board, and we can even extrapolate that, for example, across the Eskom, across to the Rand Water Board crisis that we had a couple of months ago. It's all the same thing. It's about a failure of our institutions. It's about the failure in the ability to collect all the data, to make a meaningful decision, and then to act in a consequential manner. That's our crisis.
Could I ask Dr. Herold, and do we have enough civil engineers?
Well, that's a chicken and egg question, really. Yes, we do have enough engineers, but we don't have them in the right places. What's basically happened is that a lot of our government institutions have become what I would call engineer unfriendly. And as a result, a lot of the skills have been moving out of, for example, the Department of Water and Sanitation and into the private sector. So we've now got more engineers in the private sector and less in the government sector.
Now, why are they so engineer unfriendly?
Well, there are a number of reasons, and it varies from municipality to municipality and so forth. But I think one of the issues is dare one say, a racial issue. That for historical reasons, the vast majority of the engineers, of the experienced engineers and the senior engineers and the middle managers within our government departments and within our municipalities were white, simply because blacks had not been trained. And now with the change of government and the emphasis on changing over the racial mix, which is a good thing and it must happen and will happen, but it's been implemented in the wrong ways.
Okay, Dr. Herold, just after this I would like to follow on that and what you are doing, maar jy kan miskien net vinnig die punt maak rondom die Kubane en hoe julle probeer het om ander mense binne Suid-Afrika te kry en dit wel gekry het. Is dit so?
Ja, wel, ons het binne 'n week, 7 dae het ons 34 gekwalifiseerde ingenieurs gekry wat gewillig is om die werk te doen. Op die einde van die dag sê dit is die politieke beleide, rasse gefokus en natuurlik finansies. En ek dink as jy ingenieurs aanstel wat die werk kan doen, kan jy met die helfte van die ouens op die aanleg sit en jy sal hulle onkostes kan dek. En aan die ander kant natuurlik wat die ingenieurs betref, ons het ouens met jare se ondervinding wat hierdie goed gebou het. Kry die jong swart ingenieurs, wees mentors vir hulle en gee vir die ouens die geleentheid om natuurlik daai praktiese ondervinding op te bou.
Ja, ek wil net sê dat ons het probeer om die departement ook hier te kry, maar ongelukkig van weer watter omstandighede ook al, het dit nie so gebeur nie. Ons gesels net hierna verder, bly by ons. Ons is terug en ons gesels oor Suid-Afrika se waterkrisis en nou gaan ons praat oor wat nou vorentoe. Maar Julius, julle het nou al reeds besluit, julle gaan nie net stil sit en net sommer kyk wat dinge verval nie, julle gaan dinge doen en toe doen julle dinge en die twee van julle het toe nou oor Twitter al allerlei interessante gesprekke daaroor gehad. Vertel ons net, wat het julle gedoen?
Frik, Afriforum het nou vir die laaste 5 jaar in die Kama munisipaliteit vir die munisipaliteit gevra om die rioolwater daar op standaard te kry. Waterwese het niks gedoen nie, Blou Skorpioene het niks gedoen nie. Omgewingsake en die Groen Skorpioene het niks gedoen nie. Tot op hede is daai water onbehandeld in ons riviere gestort. Afriforum het ingenieurs gekry. Ons het alles volgens die boek gedoen. Daar is nie enige borde of iets wat mense of slotte op daai hekke van daai rioolwerke gewees nie. Ons het ingegaan, ons daai plek opgeknap, op standaard gekry, ons het self gaan regmaak.
Met die medewete van die munisipaliteit?
Met die medewete dat ons hulle nog kostebevel ook teen hulle gaan probeer kry om my geld terug te kry.
En hulle het julle nie probeer keer nie?
Hulle het glad nie eens geantwoord op die brief nie.
Is hulle kwaad vir julle?
Ons weet nie, maar jy weet op die eind van die dag gaan dit oor geregtigheid. As enige van ons aan tafel waterbesoedeling, ons kry direktief teen ons en ons maak nie goed reg nie, kry ons 5 tot 10 jaar se tronkstraf. In die laaste 5 jaar het hierdie ouens besoedeling gedoen. Daar is nie een regeringsamptenaar wat toegesluit is weens waterbesoedeling nie. En die regering is die grootste besoedelaar van ons waterbronne.
Professor Turton, is he a water cowboy?
No, look, I recognise in a democracy the role of activism, but what concerns me, Frick, and this is an important thing I'm going to make now, is I believe that we are seeing failure of the state. At different levels, we're seeing actual state failure taking place now. This is my view. And what concerns me is that when we cross the line into vigilante action, where we take the law into our own hands and we do it ourselves, I think we're now crossing an important barrier. And I'm very concerned about vigilante action. So,
But if the government doesn't listen?
Well, I accept that the government doesn't listen and therefore we are frustrated. But all I'm saying is that we are at a point now where I am starting to see vigilante action happen at various levels. And my personal concern is that once we become vigilantes and we take the law into our own hands, we go into a different uncharted territory. So I also believe that AfriForum could potentially lose its legitimacy as an organisation if it does that. I'm not saying it mustn't be an activist. That's very important. I'm just saying don't become a vigilante, because if you become a vigilante, we are suddenly now in uncharted territories, and we're seeing far too much vigilantism. In the mining sector, for example, there's significant vigilante action taking place there, which in my view has actually taken us back. We can't progress as a result of
so what should the ordinary citizen do?
Well, I think the ordinary citizen must be very aware, and ultimately, we're talking here about water shedding, and I personally don't believe that water shedding is going to work like electric load shedding. I think what's going to happen is that effectively we've lost our assurance of supply, if you talk about technical engineering terms. So what that means is much like the current taxpayer pays a private security company for their additional security. All that's going to happen now is the private citizen is going to take care of their own water quality, or they're going to have some on-site storage. That's really what's going to happen. Much like with Eskom, you've got your on-site generator, the same type of thing. But now when you get to water, it's a lot more complex now. You can't just have a JoJo tank full of water on your premises. You've now got to make sure that water is healthy, etc.
Quality and so on.
So in other words, we're getting to a different space now, and I think once we're going into this area, I'm very conscious of the fact that I don't want to sow the seeds of panic, because I think that is not a healthy thing to do. But I think we do need to realise we are going into a very significant, very serious situation now. We need to manage that situation, and ultimately what it's going to come down to is each person is ultimately going to become responsible for their own service provision, if you like. But then what I've just said about vigilante action, we must be very careful not to go into that grey area of taking the law into our own hands.
Okay. Dr. Herold, and what are you doing as an institute? You said the government consider you as people who have some kind of a disease, but what now?
No, I wouldn't say they regard us as that. They want engineers, they desperately do want them, but they're having difficulty retaining them. They're having lots of new candidates coming in at the bottom of the organisation.
But do you engage government?
Yes, we do try to engage them. The one problem is it's not always that easy to get hold of the right people, the people at the top.
Are you making progress?
I believe we're making progress, but probably a lot slower than one would like.
What would you say then? What should we do? Ordinary citizens, you.
Well, okay, well, as ordinary citizens obviously have to conserve water. Particularly when you start moving into a drought situation, as we may well be doing. We don't actually know, because nobody knows what next year's rain is going to be like, or the year after that. So as private citizens, we need to look at our own fixtures in our houses, leaking taps, tap washers, loo washers, which are wasting enormous amount of water, and also overloading our sewage works, which is sort of like a double whammy. We also have to look at our pipework between the meter and our house, because there are losses that happen there as well. Our pipework also corrodes with time.
And the big problem then, in general, what can we do?
The big problem overall, there's a desperate need for the young engineers who are raw out of university and have to be mentored. They have to have mentors within the organizations.
Do you have a program such as that one?
Yes, we certainly do have mentoring programs. It's one of the things that we do provide. But within the Department of Water and Sanitation, for example, you have to try and fill that middle management gap, which is growing all the time, because the people are coming at the bottom, they're not moving through into the middle management positions. The older engineers at the top are getting older, the gap's widening all the time, and we're losing expertise. So these new engineers have to be mentored. So we need to provide those mentors within water affairs.
And you offering that service?
Well, yes, there are two ways of doing that. The one is that people who have moved out of water affairs for one reason or another, those who retired, we can retread them, try and bring them back on a temporary basis, maybe a more permanent basis, to try and fulfill that mentoring function and to fulfill those essential middle management positions that are so essential for keeping things going.
Okay, Dr. Herold, yes?
And then the private sector, where we've got a surplus of engineers, especially in the present economic climate, is to second them into water affairs, into municipalities, to fulfill positions, maybe on a short-term contract, 2 years or whatever the case may be, but to make use of those skills so that the decision-making processes can take place timeously, things can get done and it can progress.
Well, we hope you can have success. Wat gaan julle nou verder doen? Dieselfde soort van ding?
Ja, absoluut. Ons gaan aanhou. Ons gaan nie die reg in ons eie hande hou nie, maar as daar noodgevalle is, gaan ons intree, Freek. 4 kinders sterf elke 90 sekondes wêreldwyd weens water wat besoedel is. Ons kan nie oor nog 'n kind se lijk in Suid-Afrika staan nie. Die regering is heeltyd reaktief. Ons moet begin proaktief wat water betref optree. Dit is krities. Water is lewe. Ons kan nie sonder dit gaan nie.
Maar het julle al probeer op die topvlak inkom en met die minister byvoorbeeld te praat of so?
Ja, nee, op vele kere. Ons het al met direkteur-generaals almal. As daar nie 'n munisipale bestuurder toegesluit gaan word weens waterbesoedeling binnekort nie, gaan ons nie 'n verskil sien nie. Dit is maar die regering saamwerk, is in grondwet daai cooperative governance geskryf. Ons kort 'n onafhanklike reguleerder wat hierdie ouens die wet kan toepas. Ons het baie goeie wetgewing en natuurlik ek dink die privatisering van waterdienste is dalk 'n goeie opsie om vir 'n goeie ekonomie, jy weet, en natuurlik 'n kompetisie, 'n kompeterende mark, dat die vrye markstelsel inkom, dat ouens weer verantwoordelik gehou kan word en om 'n goeie kwaliteit bron aan ons te lewer.
Net op daai punt, ek wou graag vir die professor gevra het om net ietsie te vertel van die verskriklike besoedeling wat daar is, maar daar's nou nie ongelukkig nie meer tyd nie. Maar hy het bewys dat sy navorsing dat die gifinhoud van water wat deur Herold besmet is soos 'n rinkelse gif, 'n slang.
It wasn't my research, it's CSR research. Dr. Fritz Carlson, who was a chemist some years ago, was working on the Hartbeespoort Dam project.
So it's serious.
Yeah. No,
if you drink the water, it's like being bitten by a snake.
Well, that's not quite. Once again, I don't want to be alarmist about that. But what I am concerned about is the level of eutrophication in the country, because ultimately the eutrophication is a very complex issue, and we haven't got time to deal with it now. But eutrophication, in my view, is something that we really have to take very, very seriously in the future.
Thank you, Professor. Baie dankie ook aan ons gaste en aan ons kykers daar by die huis. Skryf gerus aan ons met kommentaar of voorstelle na robinson@aktueel.tv of kontak ons op Facebook of Twitter met die adres by Freek Robinson. Goed gaan tot volgende Sondag. Totsiens.